They've touched our hearts, they've made us smile, and became dear friends, who we will always remain hopelessly devoted to.
What do you do when you lose the people you love the most? For John Travolta, it didn't happen just once, it happened twice. First, he lost his teenage son, Jett, in 2009 during a tragic vacation. Years later, he lost his wife, Kelly Preston, his great love of nearly 30 years, to cancer in 2020. That kind of pain could crush anyone, but Travolta stood firm, refusing to crumble according to the script everyone expected. Now at 71, in the twilight years of his life, John Travolta has quietly embarked on a meaningful retreat. He hasn't just sold the planes that once symbolized his passion and resounding success. He's also divesting himself of personal belongings and hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. It's as if he's shedding every burden of a glamorous life, seeking a deeper tranquility. He even shared a message that many fans believe is the final farewell from a legend. So, what is truly happening in the soul of this great man? Is this a collapse in the face of tragedy, or a conscious decision to let go and find peace? John Travolta's quiet journey is telling a poignant story about confronting loss and the yearning for serenity. A difficult childhood and an artistic dream, John Joseph Travolta was born on February 18, 1954, in Englewood, New Jersey, where he was the youngest of 6 children in a bustling and often chaotic household. His father, Salvatore Travolta, was a former semi-professional football player who had settled into a life of running a small tire repair shop called Travolta Tire Exchange. Salvatore worked tirelessly every day, constantly grappling with the financial pressures of providing for his large family. The artistic soul of the family came from John's mother, Helen Cecilia Burke, who had been a singer and actress with a radio group called the Sunshine Sisters before becoming a high school drama teacher. It was Helen who filled their modest home with music and performance, often singing tunes from classic musicals like Oklahoma and The Sound of Music, planting the first seeds of artistic passion in her youngest son's heart. While his home was a haven of creativity, the world outside was far less welcoming. At school, John was an outsider, a sensitive boy with fair skin and a slender build that earned him the cruel nickname Pinky from his classmates. To make matters worse, he struggled with a stutter, a vulnerability that made him an easy target for bullies. The schoolyard became a place of anxiety and dread, making each day a difficult trial for the shy young boy. It was only when he returned home that John could escape into a world of his own making, where he felt safe and empowered. Within the walls of his family's house, he could be anyone he wanted to be, singing along to his mother's records, dancing with uninhibited joy, and creating small, imaginative plays that he would perform for his older siblings. This makeshift home stage became his sanctuary, a place where his creativity could flourish without fear of judgment or ridicule. A pivotal moment that would shape his entire future occurred when John was just 12 years old. He landed a small role in a local community theater production of a play titled Who Will Save the Plowboy? During one performance, feeling that his lines were a bit dry, he instinctively decided to add a few humorous, ad-libbed remarks. The moment he delivered his spontaneous lines, the entire auditorium erupted in a wave of genuine laughter. That sound, that powerful connection he felt with the audience, had a profound and immediate impact on him. He would later recount that this was the exact instant he realized, with absolute certainty, I was born to be on stage. That newfound passion quickly grew into an all-consuming fire. At the age of 16, John made a decision that would alter the course of his life forever when he chose to drop out of Dwight Morrow High School. With the blessing of his parents, he packed a small bag, boarded a bus, and set off for New York City to chase his dream. Life in the sprawling metropolis was unforgiving for a teenager with no connections and very little money. He took on a series of menial jobs to survive, washing dishes in the back of restaurants, delivering flowers across the city, and sleeping in cheap bunk beds at a local YMCA. Despite the hardships, he never wavered in his pursuit, attending every audition he could find, absorbing each rejection, and relentlessly pushing forward. This period of struggle and perseverance was forging the resilience he would need for the extraordinary journey that lay ahead. Sudden stardom and first heartbreak. After several years of persistent effort, taking small roles in off-Broadway plays and appearing in television commercials, John Travolta's big break finally arrived. In 1975, he was cast as Vinnie Barbarino, the charismatic but dim-witted leader of the Sweat Hogs in the popular television sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter. His character, with his signature catchphrase, "Up your nose with a rubber hose," instantly became a fan favorite, and the 21-year-old Travolta was catapulted into the stratosphere of fame. He became a national teen idol overnight, his face gracing the covers of countless magazines, and his presence inciting screams of adoration from young fans wherever he went. His ascent continued at a rapid pace. In 1976, he took on a more dramatic leading role in the television movie The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, earning critical acclaim for his sensitive portrayal of a boy with a deficient immune system. But it was the year 1977 that would solidify his status as a global superstar. He was cast as Tony Manero in Saturday Night Fever, and his performance created a cultural phenomenon that defined an era. The image of Travolta in his iconic white suit, strutting down the streets of Brooklyn and commanding the disco dance floor to the soundtrack of the Bee Gees, became an indelible part of cinematic history. The film was a massive international hit, and at just 23 years old, he received his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. The following year, in 1978, he further cemented his legend by starring as Danny Zuko opposite Olivia Newton-John in the film adaptation of the musical Grease, another blockbuster that became one of the most beloved movie musicals of all time. While his professional life was a whirlwind of unprecedented success, his personal life was about to be struck by an unforeseen and devastating tragedy. During the filming of The Boy in the Plastic Bubble in 1976, he met and fell deeply in love with actress Diana Hyland. Diana was 18 years his senior, but the age difference was irrelevant to them as they shared an intense and profound connection. John believed he had found the love of his life, a partner who understood him completely. Their passionate romance was tragically short-lived. Just as his fame was reaching its zenith with the release of Saturday Night Fever, John received the horrific news that Diana's breast cancer, which had been in remission, had returned aggressively. Her condition deteriorated rapidly, and John immediately left the film set, flying back to Los Angeles to be by her side during her final days. He stayed with her constantly, holding her hand and providing comfort as her strength faded. On March 27, 1977, Diana Hyland passed away in John's arms. He later described the heart-wrenching moment with painful clarity, stating that he literally felt the final breath leave her body. At just 23, he was on top of the professional world, but was simultaneously plunged into the depths of personal grief. The tragedy was compounded when, only a few weeks later, he had to publicly face his sorrow. Diana was posthumously awarded an Emmy for her performance in The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, and a tearful John accepted the award on her behalf in front of a live television audience. This profound loss carved a deep and lasting scar on his soul, a pain that would shadow him for the rest of his life. The downfall, from the summit to the abyss. Following the monumental successes of Saturday Night Fever and Grease, the weight of expectation on John Travolta's shoulders became immense. Hollywood studios and the global audience now saw him as an invincible star, a golden boy whose touch could turn any project into a blockbuster. However, the entertainment industry is notoriously fickle, and the bright flame of stardom can be extinguished just as quickly as it is ignited. The early 1980s marked the beginning of a challenging period for John, as his career momentum began to stall and he entered a prolonged slump. He experienced a string of commercial failures that chipped away at his box office appeal. In 1981, he starred in director Brian De Palma's thriller, Blowout, a film that, despite earning rave reviews from critics and being regarded today as one of his finest performances, was met with indifference by the movie-going public and failed to make a profit. Audiences who had embraced him as a charismatic dancer and a charming high school rebel were not ready to accept him in such a dark and complex role. In 1983, he attempted to recapture the magic of Grease by reuniting with Olivia Newton-John in the romantic comedy Two of a Kind. But the film was a critical and commercial disaster. That same year, he starred in Staying Alive, the highly anticipated sequel to Saturday Night Fever, directed by Sylvester Stallone. Despite his intense physical preparation for the role, which involved a rigorous bodybuilding and dance regimen, the film was widely panned by critics and failed to live up to the legacy of the original. His career continued on a downward trajectory as he made several crucial missteps in his film choices. He famously turned down the lead role in the 1986 film Top Gun, a part that would ultimately launch Tom Cruise into superstardom, reportedly because of his personal fear of flying in military jets. He had also previously missed the opportunity to play the titular role in the 1978 blockbuster Superman. Throughout the remainder of the 1980s, John Travolta continued to work steadily, but the films he appeared in were largely forgettable and commercially unsuccessful. He felt as though his flame had gone out, and it seemed as if the industry and the public no longer cared. The man who had once been one of the biggest stars on the planet had faded into relative obscurity, falling from the highest peak of fame into the deep abyss of Hollywood's forgotten list. For nearly a decade, he was no longer considered an A-list star, a bitter and humbling experience for an actor who had once had the world at his feet. A miraculous rebirth and a new peak. After nearly a decade of struggling in a career wilderness filled with unremarkable roles, it seemed to many that John Travolta's time in the spotlight was definitively over. The industry had moved on, and he was largely considered a relic of a bygone era. But then, a single phone call changed everything and set the stage for one of the greatest comebacks in Hollywood history. In 1994, a bold and brilliant young director named Quentin Tarantino was preparing to make his second feature film, a highly unconventional crime story called Pulp Fiction. Tarantino had been a devoted fan of Travolta's early work, particularly his performances in Saturday Night Fever and Blowout, and he was convinced that John possessed the unique combination of cool detachment, underlying humor, and latent menace required for the role of the heroin-addicted hitman, Vincent Vega. At the time, casting Travolta in a major role was seen as a massive gamble, and the film's producers vehemently objected, pushing for a more current, bankable star. However, Tarantino was adamant and fought tirelessly to secure him for the part. No one could have predicted the cultural impact of that decision. Pulp Fiction became a global phenomenon, revolutionizing independent cinema and achieving massive critical and commercial success. John Travolta's portrayal of Vincent Vega was a revelation, becoming instantly iconic, particularly the memorable scene where he performs the twist with Uma Thurman. The role not only earned him his second Academy Award nomination, but, more importantly, it resurrected his career from the ashes, catapulting him back to the very top of the Hollywood A-list with astonishing speed. This incredible revival ushered in a new golden age for Travolta. Throughout the latter half of the 1990s and into the 2000s, he starred in a string of successful films, including Get Shorty, for which he won a Golden Globe Award, and action blockbusters like Face/Off, Broken Arrow, and The General's Daughter. During this period of renewed success, it is estimated that he earned over $150 million from film salaries alone. With his immense wealth, he was able to fully indulge his lifelong passion for aviation. As a licensed pilot with certifications to fly multiple types of aircraft, he turned his dream into a breathtaking reality. In 2001, he purchased the aforementioned $10 million estate in the Jumbolair aviation community in Ocala, Florida, a home that was a pilot's paradise. He amassed an impressive collection of aircraft, including a Gulfstream jet, a Dassault Falcon, and his prized Boeing 707, which he lovingly named Jet Clipper Ella after his children. His life was once again a dream fulfilled. He had a thriving career, unimaginable wealth, and, most importantly, a happy and stable family with his wife, actress Kelly Preston, whom he had married in 1991, and their children, Jett and Ella Blue. He would often pilot his own planes, flying his family to destinations all over the world. He was living a life that seemed scripted for a perfect Hollywood ending, but fate, in its cruel and unpredictable way, was preparing to write a different, far more tragic chapter. Unimaginable tragedies and overwhelming loss. Just as he was enjoying the tranquil peak of a life well lived, John Travolta was about to face the first of two devastating tragedies that would irrevocably alter the foundation of his world. His firstborn child, Jett, who was born in 1992, had lived with autism and Kawasaki syndrome, a condition that can cause seizures. The Travolta family had always been fiercely protective of Jett's privacy, doing everything in their power to provide him with a loving and supportive environment away from the public eye. On January 2nd, 2009, while the family was on their annual holiday vacation at their home in the Bahamas, the unthinkable happened. Jett suffered a severe seizure in a bathroom, causing him to fall and hit his head. John was the first to find him, and in that moment of pure horror, his paternal instincts took over. He desperately administered CPR, fighting with every ounce of his being to bring his son back from the brink. But despite his frantic efforts, it was too late. Jett passed away at the tragically young age of 16. The death of his son was, in John's own words, "the worst thing that's ever happened in my life." The grief was all-consuming, a profound and bottomless pain that nearly shattered him. For months afterward, he struggled to function, later admitting that there were many mornings when he simply did not want to wake up and face another day in a world without his son. This tragedy left a permanent void in his heart, a wound that would never fully heal. 11 years later, as he was still navigating the enduring sorrow of losing Jett, fate delivered another cruel blow. His beloved wife, Kelly Preston, his partner and confidant for nearly 3 decades, lost her private 2-year battle with breast cancer. She had chosen to keep her illness out of the public sphere, sharing the struggle only with her closest family and friends. On July 12, 2020, Kelly passed away at the age of 57. For John, this loss was a devastating echo of his past. It was the very same disease that had taken his first love, Diana Hyland, exactly 43 years earlier. A coincidence of staggering cruelty. In the immediate aftermath of Kelly's death, a quiet conversation with his youngest son, Benjamin, who was only 10 at the time, became a moment of profound clarity for John. Benjamin, consumed by fear, told his father, "Because Mom died, I'm afraid you're going to go too." The innocent, terrified words of a child who had just lost his mother struck John to his core. He realized in that moment that he could not allow himself to be consumed by his grief. He had to live, not just for himself, but for Ella and Benjamin. They needed their father now more than ever. The very next day, on July 13, 2020, John posted a statement on Instagram announcing to the world his new priority. He wrote, "I will be taking some time to be there for my children who have lost their mother. So forgive me in advance if you don't hear from us for a while." This was more than just a message. It was a declaration. His focus was no longer on Hollywood or his career. It was entirely on his children. These unimaginable losses had not destroyed him. They had reshaped him, giving him a new and singular purpose, the goodbye and a new choice. Following the death of his wife, Kelly, John Travolta entered a new phase of his life, one he described as a state of semi-retirement. He consciously withdrew from the glaring spotlight and the demanding pace of Hollywood, turning his attention inward toward the one thing that mattered most: his family. He became a full-time father in every sense of the word, dedicating his time and energy to guiding his 2 remaining children through their own profound grief. He quietly and steadfastly supported his daughter, Ella, as she began to pursue her own career in music and acting, providing guidance from the sidelines rather than using his immense influence to pave her way. He was determined to protect Benjamin, ensuring he could have as normal a childhood as possible, shielded from the intrusive lens of the media. Their home in Jumble became a sanctuary of healing, a quiet place where the three of them could rebuild their lives together, moment by moment. While his passion for flying remained, it now served a different purpose, becoming less a symbol of status and more a means of creating new, private memories with his children. He continued to accept film roles, but his choices became far more selective. He was no longer interested in blockbusters or box office numbers, opting instead for smaller, independent projects and roles that held a deep personal meaning or resonated with his own life experiences. Then, as he entered his early 70s around 2025, John began a process that those close to him saw as his final farewell, not to life itself, but to the material world that had once defined him. He started to systematically give away his most treasured possessions, artifacts from a lifetime of fame and fortune. He reportedly began to downsize his extensive aircraft collection and even recorded what has been described as a final message for his fans, a heartfelt thank you for their decades of support. These actions understandably caused concern, with many speculating that he was preparing for his own end, that his spirit had finally been broken. But the reality was the exact opposite. This was not an act of despair. It was a conscious and liberating choice born from deep reflection. John Travolta had come to understand that after losing the people he loved most, the planes, the mansions, and the awards were all meaningless. The only thing of true value was the time he had left with his children and the memories they could still create together. He chose his family over fame, quiet moments over the roar of the crowd, and peace over the glittering but empty promises of the spotlight that had given him everything and also taken so much away. It was the ultimate, definitive choice of a legend. A choice made not to end his story, but to truly begin living the final, most important chapter. After witnessing John Travolta's incredible journey of soaring triumphs, devastating losses, and difficult choices, what are your thoughts on his ultimate decision to place his children above everything else? Do you believe you would have the courage to make a similar choice in your own life? If this story moved you, we invite you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your feelings in the comments below. We are committed to bringing you more in-depth stories about the lives of iconic figures, stories you are unlikely to find anywhere else. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. Until then, take care.